we should let everybody know exactly what you do, which is you've done visual effects, you've done scenic artistry, makeup, obviously in Star Trek, which is, it's kind of surprising to have somebody that is working on Star Trek behind a computer and doing special effects or visual effects, I should say, but then also doing something tactile, which is, making aliens, for example. I don't know if those two things are connected. Do you feel like those two things are connected, or do you feel like it's two completely different skills?
It's all connected. One thing informs the other. I mean, every time I would switch over to something else, everything, when I would go and being a visual effects artist, when I went to Orville to do graphics for the show, everything that I learned doing visual effects informed things that I was doing when it came to doing graphics on Orville. When I was on Deep Space Nine, I hadn't had that experience yet. What I brought to visual effects, like I said, it's one thing informs the other. You'd be surprised, like somebody who is a visual effects artist and has just sat behind the computer and hasn't worked in the physical world with real light and stuff like that, or lit models, or had to paint a face and see what it looks like on screen or what it looks like through the camera. You bring that to visual effects and CG. That if you've had that experience, it's a real bonus to have worked doing all that other stuff. So yeah, it's all connected, all connected. I probably did more. I probably was involved with more aspects of Star Trek than anybody who ever worked on the show. Makeup and makeup, illustration, graphics, visual effects. For me, it was like, I started as a makeup artist, and when you get on a show like that, and I draw and I sketch and I paint and I sculpt, So when I'm on stage, I'm looking at that architecture, the sets just blows me away. And Mike Okuda's graphics on Next Generation. I lived on the Enterprise D as a makeup artist, and I would look at Mike's work and be so blown away by how authentic and how much heart they had, and how he didn't treat anything like it wasn't important. Everything had a purpose. You'd go into engineering, there'd be these fantastic flow charts, and you'd follow them, and they'd all be there. They would all be there, and that's why all of the Roddenberry reboot era, which was Next Generation all the way through to the end of Enterprise, was a show that stuck close to Gene, and that meant that you weren't doing science fiction. When you did science fiction, it had to have real thought behind it as far as real technology. Guys like Michael Okuda and Rick Sternbach are all like junior scientists. I have a good understanding of engineering and science, but those guys really, when you sit and talk with Mike and Rick about, how many pounds of thrust a certain type of vernier rocket, it's all in their head. So for me, it was like going to school. I had an understanding, but to work with them and understand how what they brought to the show made everything on the show seemed realistic, like it could function. Too often I watch on television shows and movies where they'll just do a design because it's cool, The Enterprises, most of them anyway, you could look at them and half the fun was taking those, like if you look at the Voyager, you could look at it and figure out how it works, how it comes apart. Star Trek fans like to take stuff apart. It's a puzzle. It's a big puzzle. If you start looking at stuff and taking it apart and it doesn't work, that's a disappointment. Basically, form follows function, and that's always important. But on Star Trek, you should do form follows function, but it's a little bit more like your car or an automobile, that you want it to look sexy at the same time, not just functional. And that's what Star Trek spaceships are, for me anyway.
A couple things there really quickly. Number one, tell me about it with all that thrust. Sirach's always like, this ship doesn't have enough thrust to go warp 4.5 around a planet. That's bogey.
You're my kind of guy. That's important. That's important. It really is. It really is.
But the other thing is kind of something you said kind of perked my ears. You said the Voyager. And I've noticed that on Voyager, the show, that's the only show where they call their ship Voyager, not the Voyager. They say the Enterprise, the Defiant, but they don't say the Voyager.
They say Voyager.
Was there ever a thing where they said, hey, we're going to just start calling it Voyager instead of the Voyager? Or is that just too nitpicky and nobody cares?
No, it's not too nitpicky. I've thought about it myself. I don't know, if I can draw a line to where that really started.
Mm-hmm.
On the original series, they referred to the Enterprise as the Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
But Kirk would still get on the communicator and say Enterprise. He wouldn't say, hey, the Enterprise.
Good point.
I think that ships in the real world, they tend to just say their name, like Nimitz. And Nimitz was off the coast of, you would see you could say it, but I don't know. That's a good thing. Let's look that up.
Let's find out.